Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Alex, and recently the All-Star Reserves just came out, and I got a couple of questions. But before we get into that, even a week ago the starters came out, and there were questions about whether should Embiid be a starter or not. I definitely think he should have been, but it's very hard when you have to debate between Tatum, Kevin Durant, and Giannis. Like, you got to take someone out. So at the end of the day, one of those guys was going to be snubbed. So it would have been a problem either way. We'll kind of talk about that later on, but we got to talk about the All-Star Reserves because, geez, I got a lot of questions about this. It's honestly it's pretty bad. We're going to start off with the Western Conference because I feel like that has the least amount of problems, but there are still some stuff that I want to talk about. So if you weren't aware, the reserves who were chosen, it was Ja Morant, Gilgeous-Alexander as the 2 guard spots off the bench, and then for the 3 solidified forward spots off the bench, you had Domantas Sabonis, Paul George, and Lauri Markkanen, and then you had 2 wild card picks, and those 2 wild card picks were Damian Lillard and, surprisingly, Jaren Jackson Jr. So one thing before we get into the Jaren Jackson Jr. thing, because I think that's the biggest problem out of the Western Conference, some people may have questions about Damian Lillard being here because, he did miss a good part of the season, kind of in and out of the rotation for the Blazers. And the Blazers were only the 11th seed, but at least as of recently, Damian Lillard has been an absolute tear. He's just scoring so many points. Like, I think he's averaging like 39 points in like the past 5-6 games or something like that, and thankfully for the Blazers, they've been winning those games as well, so that has definitely looked really good for them. I would definitely understand if you had questions about Damian Lillard being there because the Blazers are the 11th seed, but here's the real problem that I have with the Western Conference, and it's the fact that Jaren Jackson Jr. is here. So I don't know if you guys were paying attention to the actual results of the media, the fans, and the player voting for when the starters came out, but Jaren Jackson Jr. was nowhere to be seen on that list. So it's kind of surprising that Jaren Jackson Jr. is here off the bench. The coaches do pick the reserves, so it would make sense that there maybe would be some differences that we just wouldn't see because the coaches don't vote for the starters in the All-Star game. But it's just so weird that almost everyone didn't expect Jaren Jackson Jr. to even be considered as an all-star, yet he's here on the list, and I honestly just don't really understand it. I'm assuming that the coaches felt enticed to put him in the all-star game just because the Grizzlies are the 2nd seed in the West, and Ja Morant has been playing okay, but obviously not his best season this year. I would definitely say he played better last season, so I think they were trying to just give someone else on that team a little bit more credit, and they gave it to Jaren Jackson Jr. But this is why that confuses me, because they're obviously valuing winning in this scenario. So if you're going to value winning, again, I have to beg the question, why is Damian Lillard here? I think there's 2 other guys that I think you definitely could have taken who still give up good stats, and they are pretty much leading their team to a positive record in the West. Those 2 players are De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Edwards. De'Aaron Fox, I think, is definitely the person that I think is the biggest snub in the West. Sabonis did make the All-Star team, so I guess it would be weird if the Kings had 2 All-Stars. But I think both Sabonis and Fox have played equal amounts of importance in the Kings actually being good this year. The Kings are a 3rd seed, I believe, just going off the top of my head. And they're actually making a pretty clear gap between the 3rd seed and the 4th seed, at least as I'm recording this. So, it would make sense for Fox to also make this list. But again, if they're valuing winning, I don't actually think Damian Lillard should be here. I think De'Aaron Fox should be here. And then if you didn't think it was Fox, I think Anthony Edwards would be the next guy. It's not that Jaren Jackson Jr. isn't worthy. I think there's just a lot of other talent in the league right now that I think is playing better than him. And also that they're actually leading their teams to an above 500 record. Jaren Jackson Jr. is arguably the 2nd or 3rd best player on the team. You could have a debate between him or Desmond Bane. But then the next problem that I have with the West, and it's the last one before we get to the Eastern Conference, Paul George. I guess Paul George is, okay. The Clippers are actually surprisingly doing pretty well despite, Kawhi and PG, being kind of in and out of the lineup. They're starting to figure it out a little bit more as time moves along. But in my opinion, I just think there's better candidates, and one of those guys, it's gotta be Anthony Davis, man. And before you guys complain to me saying, ooh, the Lakers are one of the worst teams in the West, and they're like the 11th or 12th seed, LeBron's already a starter, they're not winning enough games to have 2 All-Stars. And I would definitely understand that logic. And then you may also question the amount of games that Anthony Davis has played. I want to bring this to your attention. Zion Williamson was voted in as a starter in the All-Star game for the West. He has played the exact same games, the exact same amount of games as Anthony Davis, And I think you can obviously argue that Anthony Davis has just been better this season. Despite the winning of the Lakers, Anthony Davis has played at a MVP caliber level. Was arguably, before he got injured, he's probably leading the Defensive Player of the Year race. He was just on an absolute tear. He was actually looking like, I wouldn't say bubble AD, but he was looking like he was going to be getting close to that level. I think his play alone, despite the games missed and how poor the Lakers have been playing, so I think that has more to do with the roster construction than it does Anthony Davis. Yeah, I just think Anthony Davis deserves to be here. And again, if you're going to pull that he hasn't played enough games, Zion Williamson is here. And again, you put Damian Lillard here, so if you valued winning, Damian shouldn't be here either, right? It should be other players. So if you ask me, I think, John Morant, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Sabonis, I think Lauri Markkanen is good. Other than that, I have questions about Paul George, Damian Lillard, and Jaren Jackson Jr. So you can take Paul George out, put AD in, and then you can have De'Aaron Fox and Damian Lillard. Or if you didn't feel like Damian Lillard deserved it, you can have De'Aaron Fox and Anthony Edwards there as your wild card picks. I think Dame is fine. Dame actually isn't the biggest problem. I'm just kind of picking on him a little bit because I just feel like the coaches are being a little bit hypocritical with what they're valuing, but that's just like how I see them determining value. I actually don't know. Obviously, I'm just a guy who records videos in their house, so I don't actually know what they valued when they voted, but just from what I'm seeing, it seemed like they valued winning, but yet they still put Damian Lillard on the list, so I don't know, just kind of confusing to me. But we'll move on to the Eastern Conference now, and for the Eastern Conference, they voted in for their 2 backup guards. They have DeMar DeRozan. What the hell is that? And then they have Jaylen Brown. I'm cool with Jaylen Brown. And then for the 3 forward spots, you have Joel Embiid. I think it's deserved. Bam Adebayo. I'm fine with that. Julius Randle, I have a question about that as well. Tyrese Halliburton as a wild card. And for the last wild card spot, Jrue Holiday. So a lot more problems, in my opinion, in the East, or even, it's equal or more, but we'll get into it. So I just have a question. Why is DeMar DeRozan voted in as a guard? If you look at Basketball Reference, and you don't even have to look at Basketball Reference, you can go to NBA.com, you can check all the stat tracking in terms of what position does DeMar DeRozan play the most when he's on the court, and you can just see he plays the forward spot. So I just don't understand why we're still voting in players who are obviously forwards at this point in their career, yet we're voting them in as a guard, because at that point it's like, why are we even putting restrictions on the positions to begin with, right? So I don't know, that's just a little bit confusing to me as well. And again, to even piggyback more on top of the coaches valuing winning when they're determining this, the Bulls have not been good at all this season. So I just don't understand why DeMar DeRozan is here. Despite him, I actually think he's been playing okay, pretty decent, definitely above average, but I just think there's better candidates. I think the one guy, if we are going to consider DeMar DeRozan a guard, you got to replace him with a guard. So I think James Harden definitely deserves to be here. He's the second best player on a team who can arguably make it to the finals. And the 76ers have been rolling, and I think a lot of it has to do with Joel Embiid, but I also think a lot of it has to do with Harden just being so much better as a playmaker. So I don't know. I just feel like Harden deserves it more than DeRozan. Now my next question. Why is Jrue Holiday here? The Jrue Holiday pick just is the same exact thing as Jaren Jackson Jr. It's the Bucks have been playing well, and we got to give him 2 All-Stars. So let's give him Jrue Holiday because Middleton's been out, and Jrue Holiday, to play devil's advocate here, Jrue Holiday has been playing really well, and I definitely think he's playing at an All-Star level. But again, with just how much talent is in the league, I just think there are better candidates. And then for my last one, I don't know if Julius Randle is an all-star. I know that the Knicks have been playing really well. The Knicks are currently at the 7th seed. They're 28-25 as I'm recording this, so I definitely understand that. But the only reason why I don't think Julius Randle is an all-star, I can't do this because he's locked in as a forward, but I just honestly think the person who should be getting the most credit for the Knicks winning this many games is actually Jalen Brunson. I think Jalen Brunson has been playing at an all-star level as well. Brunson has taken on the role of point guard extremely well, better than I actually anticipated, and I just think Brunson has been in charge of, the turnaround of the Knicks. And yes, Randle has been playing really well. I just don't think he's the main guy. I think he's definitely served more as a number 2, because when you look at the fourth quarter stats, Brunson is just better. Just efficiency-wise and scoring-wise, he's just better than Randle. And because of that reason, I would actually think Brunson is more deserving. But because we can't do that, I think Pascal Siakam is definitely more deserving. He's playing way better than him. Obviously, his counting numbers are higher. I believe his efficiency and the accuracy is a whole lot better. I think he's a better defender as well. And again, you may argue that, he shouldn't be on there because the Raptors aren't winning any games. But then I will ask again, why is Damian Lillard on this list? I just don't, in the West, I just don't understand it. So that's why I'm just confused, because on one hand, you have people who I think are definitely deserving, and they make sense because they're putting up great stats and they're winning a lot of games. But then you have instances where, a player is being chosen because the team is winning, but when you just look at the stats to another guy, in my opinion, it's just not comparable. I would have much rather voted for the guy who's statistically better and not the guy who is, statistically okay, but because he's the second guy, he's going to get the credit for being the second guy. And again, it's also confusing to me as well, because as a Nuggets fan, having the best team in the West and only having one All-Star is crazy to me. Being the second seed and having two All-Stars is confusing. I just don't understand it. And that's not to say that I think that the Nuggets should have two All-Stars. I think you can definitely, make an argument, but there's just too much talent. Like, there's just no way I can see Aaron Gordon or Jamal Murray making it over guys that I just think are better and are having better seasons, and maybe they're not winning as much. But again, those guys are leading their teams. So I don't know. But those are my thoughts on the All-Star reserves and the All-Star game in general. I'm still very excited for the All-Star game, but these are definitely just things that I thought they just confused me. Didn't agree with a lot of it as well, but I also agreed with some. Let me know down in the comments what y'all think down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like and sub. Check out my socials down in the description below, and you can check out this video somewhere on the screen where I talk about the OKC Thunder and why they arguably have the best young core in the NBA. Anyways, see you on the next one. Peace out.